All right, welcome everybody. We are going to kick things off. Um, just to introduce everyone who's going to be presenting today, we have Alesh, who is our sales engineer here at Fivetran, and Anthony Schneider from Snowflake, who's also a sales engineer.
Okay, so what I'll do is we'll start off with Fivetran and just give you an understanding of where Fivetran sits in the ELT space and what kind of value it's bringing for our NetSuite customers who are taking data from the ERP and landing it in a data warehouse. So if I can go there. So what we'll do is we'll go through the kind of quick agenda steps for on the Fivetran side, and then we'll hand it over to Anthony, who's on the Snowflake side. So essentially what Fivetran is solving is the integrator's challenge, and we've all been there in terms of this workflow. Somebody asks for a report that goes to an analyst. They in turn need to grab some data in order to fulfill that user request, and that kind of has to trickle through essentially right down to the sources. So essentially, in order to get the data to fulfill the request, you've got to jump through a number of hoops in order to, first of all, get that data and then spend some time as the analyst putting that data together so that it's coherent. So it's presentable to the user. And as you go through those hoops, what you're essentially going to find is that you're playing this constant game of Chinese whispers. And that means that elements of the requirements get lost as they go down those hoops. And essentially, even though this looks like one nice circle, actually in reality, you'll be going through this loop a number of times such that you can have a happy user at the end of the play. And this is the essential problem with ETL, because ETL is only pulling strands of data to fulfill that request. And then subsequently, you are kind of only ever collecting what you believe to be those requirements on that given day. And therefore, ETL is a never-ending cycle. As you know, users don't really kind of have they have a ballpark idea of what kind of report they want, but that gets defined over time as they understand what data they're seeing, what data they're not seeing, and therefore you've got this kind of constant iterative life cycle of building these reports. And if you kind of have that life cycle with reports, then the underlying ETL workflows have a life cycle as well. And as time goes by, APIs change, database schemas change, and forever reports are breaking or not delivering the data that you want them to deliver. And therefore, you've got to have a team maintaining these ETL workflows. Now, if you extrapolate the number of users, so on day one, you have one report. On day two, you have 100 across all your analysts and users. And essentially, you've got a team of people having to maintain these workflows. And that's a very heavy maintenance burden. And that's the difference between traditional ETL and modern ELT. Traditional ETL was all about collecting strands of data from these various sources. So all the applications, NetSuite, Salesforce, HubSpot, Facebook, all these different types of applications, delivering data as well as your databases, even events. So Kafka, Segment, all these clickstream data events, and obviously files as well. And you're picking threads of these data from these sources and delivering them into a staging area, and essentially picking out, doing the transform, and then finally building it in an area where you've got the report. And as soon as somebody changes a requirement, then you have to go right back to the source and pick another strand or adapt a strand. But this whole model was because storage was expensive. It was built, this pattern was built in the early 2000s when you actually had prohibitive storage costs. And this has not really changed. You've got ETL tools which have become easier to use, but essentially you're solving the same problem. So even if your ETL workflow is super easy to create, you're still going to suffer that maintenance burden, because essentially APIs are going to change, requirements are going to change. And this is why we have the modern data stack, modern ELT. With the and this is actually thinking about your end goal here. With something like Snowflake, then you actually have a really straightforward way of delivering data into your data warehouse, and subsequently you don't have these prohibitive storage costs. And then what you can do is deliver all that data from your sources, and don't have to worry about ever going back to your sources to collect incremental changes or any other data. Essentially, you can take all the data from your sources, load it into your warehouse, and with something like Snowflake, that's what it's made for, to run these push down queries and transform your data. So rather than actually having to go through this iterative life cycle, you've got all the data there in one place, so you never have to go back to source. And that's where Fivetran comes in. Fivetran is essentially delivering a workflow which allows you to take all your data in one go from all your sources, and subsequently have it in your warehouse from which you can build reports from. And that's the value of what Fivetran's delivering. In a really straightforward way, you're able to collect all the data from your sources and deliver them into your warehouse. And essentially what we're going to do first of all is, if we're going to kind of look on, talk about NetSuite. So this is about the NetSuite masterclass. So before I just kind of commit to the demonstration, what I'm going to do is give you an understanding of the value Fivetran's delivering. So rather than actually just taking strands of data like we talked about with traditional ETL, what we're doing with Fivetran is that we're landing the whole ERD in your data warehouse. So no longer do you have to take transactions, no longer do you have to take transactions or accounts and then actually build the entity relationship between them. What Fivetran's doing, it's taking the complete API and landing the ERD into your data warehouse, from which you can build SQL statements to actually run over that data as well. And we'll actually give you an extension of what Fivetran's doing with DBT to actually provide more value as well. So you've got a really straightforward way of landing this whole entity relationship diagram into your warehouse to build simple SQL, or actually have models running over this data to deliver real value and really kind of expedite that journey to building reports. So no longer do you have to worry about integrations breaking. You're just concentrating on that really value add to deliver reports to your business. So let's just pop out of the slides for a second, and let's go over to Fivetran. So what you can see here is the Fivetran dashboard. And the Fivetran dashboard is built so that you've got one destination, which in this case is Snowflake. So we've got a Snowflake warehouse, and we've got a number of connectors which are actually taking data from those sources and delivering them into Snowflake. So if we go to Snowflake now, you can see I've got ElashDB, and I've got a number of schemas. One of them happens to be NetSuite, and it's delivering all the NetSuite tables into my Snowflake data warehouse. Okay, so what I'll do first of all is I'll build the integration. So I'm going to go to Fivetran, and I'm going to go to the NetSuite connector, and it's using the Suite Analytics connection. So I'm going to just go to my Evernote here and just build this connection out. So let's get rid of that for a second. Okay, so cool. So I'm going to build a connection to my NetSuite Analytics account. And what it's doing now is that it's going to use my authentication, and it's going to connect to the NetSuite API. And what it's going to do is going to collect the objects for the authentication I provided, and it's going to build this connection. Okay. So what we'll do here in the meantime is actually go, while that's kind of authenticating and building that connection, what we'll do is we'll actually go over to the Fivetran documentation. And you can actually see here, we've got over 170 connectors, and we've got our NetSuite analytics page, and it gives you that documented ERD from which you can actually build your reports from. So if we go back to here, you can see the connector's been created. So if you go to view connector, you can see that connection's been established. I've actually had that connection running previously. I deleted it this morning. So if we now go to review schema, what it's going to do is actually going to bring back all the objects that I've got access to. So all the objects that will appear on the ERD, you'll have access to in Fivetran. And once it brings back those objects, what you can actually do is you can actually block columns, or you can actually hash data as well. So if we just pop open the accounts object in NetSuite, what we'll see is that you'll see all the columns within that accounts table, and you can choose to block them. So you can choose to not bring them across in the first place, or you can choose to hash them. And we use an MD5 hash. So that's a one-way encrypted hash. So you can use that hash as a primary key, but essentially you can't see that data. So now what we're going to do is do save and continue, because in true ELT sense, we're going to bring across all that data, and then we're going to start that initial sync. And that's it. So within that simple 2-minute time period, what we've done is that we've authenticated into NetSuite, and subsequently we've actually started bringing across the historical data. So that was straightforward. So essentially what we've done is that when the historical sync finishes, we are going to land all our NetSuite data into Snowflake. Now, if we go to the setup tab, what we're going to do is look at how often we want to bring back any deltas. So as you can see, once the historical sync is finished, then we can actually set up a sync frequency that will go and collect any delta updates from our NetSuite source and bring them back every 6 hours. But with Fivetran, you can actually bring that down to 5 minutes. So now, rather than actually having end of day batch reporting, you can actually have updated NetSuite analytic data coming to your data warehouse within 5 minutes in such a straightforward way with Fivetran. All you need to do is pull down the slider, and that's it. The sync frequency has been updated. You can also have logging, so you can integrate with third-party log mechanisms like CloudWatch, Azure Log Analytics, or Google Stackdriver. Or one thing that we actually introduced earlier this year was the Fivetran Log Connector. And what the Fivetran Log Connector does, if I just go back to the documentation, if I go to the Fivetran Log Connector documentation, then what we essentially do is that not only do we actually give you a very straightforward way of integrating sources to your warehouse, but we actually give you comprehensive logging on that data as well. So, and we actually present you back an ERD for our log connector as well. So you have an understanding of when something's synced, if there was any issues with that particular sync, when transformations ran, what your destinations are, what your connectors are. So you've got this comprehensive logging mechanism sitting under your ELT tool to give you some real kind of insights into what's happening in your transformations. And as well as giving you the ERD, we actually give you sample queries on your logging as well. So you have a really straightforward way of understanding what's happening in your environment. Okay, so if we now go back to the dashboard, we'll see that we've got our Fivetran log connector set up. We've got 2 NetSuite connections, one that I built earlier and our new one that we built together. we've got our logs, we've got our users, we've got an alerting mechanism to give you an understanding of if anything's going wrong in your integrations, we'll alert you. But one thing we've missed out on here is transformations. So once you've actually got your data, if we go back to my slides, we go back to my slides on this slides. At the moment, what we've taken you to is actually land this entity relationship diagram in your data warehouse. But Fivetran admit that there's still quite a journey to go to actually get from here to actually kind of, coherent reporting. And therefore, what we've done is that we've linked up with DBT. So if I go into present mode here, what we've done is that we've kind of created a partnership with DBT, which stands for Data Build Tool. And they're an open source tool which allows you to run comprehensive transformations on your data warehouse. And what Fivetran has done is that they've started creating these DBT packages. NetSuite was our first, and this actually takes you further along that journey. So where you've got those vanilla, NetSuite tables which are landing in your data warehouse, as you can see on the right hand side, you've got views which are created on that NetSuite data to take you to that next journey of actually creating those reports. So you've got balance sheet, income statement, you've got transaction details, all these derived views and tables from your NetSuite data by just running our simple DBT package over that data. And traditionally, if you've ever used NetSuite, what you'll understand about NetSuite is that the reporting is super difficult. The APIs deliver data. Actually getting to that data in the first place, Fivetran is going to help you with. But with that siloed data, it's very difficult to get a complete picture of what's happening in your organization. And Fivetran recognized this, and they've built a DBT model which allows you to run it very quickly over that Fivetran data and build these derived views. And not only that, as you can see on the bottom right-hand side here, you'll see that you've got these pre-built transformations with data lineage. So you've got this whole data lineage journey to understand where particular reports came from, because you understand what the sources were in terms of the source NetSuite tables as well. So you've got this whole end-to-end model being built out, which can actually be adapted by you to actually further enhance your reporting capability. So let's just talk about that in Fivetran. So if we now go to connectors, and you can see the NetSuite connectors are running. If we go to transformations, you can see that I've integrated with DBT transformations here. And if I configure, then you can see that I've got a GitHub repository, which is linked to my Fivetran account and running over my Snowflake data warehouse. So I've got my repository URL there. And this is linked to my GitHub account, and you can actually see my DBT model here. And if we go into packages.yaml, you can see simply I've got the NetSuite package here. And this has come from we've got a blog for all our packages. If we go just to that first link in the blog, what you'll see is that I've been able to just add this little bit of code to my packages.yaml file and then link this back to Fivetran. So if we go to code, we go to SSH, you can see that's the URL. So Fivetran's linking to this Git repo here, and subsequently what it's doing, it's running this model every 5 minutes. And so if we click on every 5 minutes, you can see that I've been running my DBT model every 5 minutes over my NetSuite data, and it's delivering these extra. So if I just remove that for a second, if I go up to DBT eMystery, you can see those extra views being created automatically by Fivetran when it runs the DBT model over the NetSuite data. So this schema is being landed by Fivetran, and then subsequently Fivetran is running a DBT model over that data and landing these views in that data. So in a really straightforward way, you've got an end-to-end solution. Let's just look what's in my balance sheet table. You've got this really forward way of actually landing the NetSuite data and then subsequently running the model and creating these extra value views on that data. And from here, you can actually kind of build your reports or even use the model as a starting point to build your reports out. So that's please feel free to ask questions on that, because it's very difficult to kind of have a one-way conversation to make sure I've covered all the bases there. So just to do a quick recap, Fivetran is building a connector to Snowflake, and it's landing the NetSuite data, and then subsequently it's running a transformation which can be configured every 5 minutes to create derived views and tables on that vanilla NetSuite data. And now if we start thinking about what Fivetran's doing in terms of its complete offering with DBT packages, so if I go to main DBT blog, what you'll see is that we've got a multitude of DBT packages. So you've got LinkedIn, HubSpot, MailChimp, and you've got loads of other packages, and we're adding value for our customers. You can see NetSuite was in there somewhere, and we've even got a DBT package for our Fivetran log connector. So we're completing that ELT story for you, loading the data in a very straightforward way, and then subsequently transforming it in a model which is extensible by our customers as well. So if we go back to our slides here, we can go back to present and just complete that journey. So Fivetran's delivering that data into your Snowflake data warehouse, running your DBT model, and providing you with insights into your data. So next, I'm going to hand over to Anthony, who's going to talk about the Snowflake side.
Thanks, Elish.
Anthony,
can you hear me okay?
Want me to run the slides, or will you be able to take over?
Can you hear me okay, Elish?
Yeah, I can. I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you want to hand over, and we'll see if you've had some late Mac issues. Otherwise, I'll get you to run the
Stop
show.
sharing my screen.
Okay.
Perfect. I can see you, Anthony. That's awesome.
You can see me? Great. Thanks, Elish. Great presentation. And I just want to pick up on the Snowflake piece and the powerful combination that is Fivetran, DBT, and Snowflake. So those that haven't had the introduction to Snowflake, really it is those three tools working in tandem to achieve that agility and that speed of delivery of getting data out of your source system and into a place where you can analyze them. And that's really where Snowflake picks up the last piece of the puzzle there. So Snowflake's foundations, we're in data warehousing, but we've definitely expanded beyond that. We see ourselves as a single cloud data platform. So we now operate across all the three major cloud providers. You can choose which one to deploy in. And what we're seeing a lot, what I'm going to talk about for the next just couple of minutes is what Elish has started there, that concept of a data lake. That is bringing all your raw data in and making it available to analysts in a secure and performant way. So there are other workloads that we're working on a lot, the ability to share data seamlessly, data science-based data applications. But effectively, Snowflake as the cloud data platform works really well with those technologies because of our core architecture, which is the separation of storage and compute. Lots of customer references. This is a very, very popular set of technology partners that work together. And the one I'll bring your attention to on the right there is Joseph Bates, the head of analytics at ShareThrough. His building a data lake with Fivetran and Snowflake is really what they've done. That ability to suck that data in, as Elish showed you in minutes. Data lake projects in the past have been large failures, typically because they take years to implement and don't provide value because of the complexity. But you've already seen from Salish there how easy it is to start to consume that data and start to query it in Snowflake. And the key architectural concept that makes that possible is that separation of storage and compute. Snowflake's 3 layers, where the data lake sits in that centralized storage area, still a database. You can apply security, you can support semi-structured and structured data, but that separation means your data lake can grow in volume independently of the compute to query it. Now, I just want to take 2 minutes to quickly show you what that end looks like in Snowflake. So I'm dropping into the Snowflake user interface, and Ilesh was using the classic user interface. I wanted to show you the new user interface, which has a similar feel. We've got a worksheet here. I'm going to log into this NetSuite demo and just quickly talk you through some of the improvements and querying that data. So one of the things that we've worked a lot on is our schema browser and metadata management. So immediately over in the right here, let's pretend Ilesh has loaded that data, and I want to look at all the fields that have a name in them. So that search on the right there, it's a very powerful Elasticsearch. So we've immediately gone through all the tables that Ilesh has dropped in and searched for the ones with names. And then what I can do is start to construct my query, and we have some new autocomplete capabilities. So for those forgetful people who perhaps forget what the column names are, we can textually give you some fields that you may want to query and examine as part of that schema. And just doing a pre-built query here, let's pretend we want to hit that main transaction detail and run a query against Snowflake. This is using independent compute, so Ilesh could be loading in the background, no impact to me as an analyst who's querying it. And immediately I can go down to that data that's been transformed in dbt and bring something back in the forms of the amount of certain transactions that have occurred within that NetSuite source data. That powerful search facility also exists within here. So if I type journal, it searches every field within that result set, and it's bringing me back all the rows that are relevant to journal. So I don't need to rerun another piece of SQL. I can start to operate on that data. And finally, the other big improvement in Snowsight and that Snowflake part of the journey is our charting capability. So I switch to chart there, immediately a data engineer can start to visualize the data, which is very important. People want to have that in the hands of every analyst. So we're not saying that we're a Tableau or a Looker, a BI tool, but we are putting basic visualization to support line charts, bar charts, and a couple of others, putting that in the hands of every single Snowflake user. And we could do a simple bucketing of that data as well. We could see that in November, there were a large number of assembly build transaction types. So straight away, within a 30-minute presentation, we've gone from source system into Snowflake, transformed with dbt, queried and visualized with Snowflake. And the final thing I wanted to mention at the end of this is me as an analyst now wants to share this dashboard or share this raw SQL with one of my colleagues. You can see the share button in the top right there. If I want to share that with my colleague George, click on George, give George the ability to run it, view it, or even edit it if we're collaborating. So there's some really cool features that we're bringing in there to complement that story. And a really powerful story, I think, for those that are wanting to embark on that data lake journey, but perhaps wanting to do it a bit more agile, a bit more quickly, with a bit more control than what's been seen in the past in a Hadoop world. So apologies, we've run a bit over time, but finally, obviously, we can extend this package of 3 tools far beyond just NetSuite and actually build that lake with lots of sources of data. As Ilesh mentioned, Fivetran has huge number of connections into source data, and get that data staged and normalized in Snowflake to form that data lake and open that up to the various areas of the business. Visualizing in Snowsight, or of course connecting one of our partner technologies, Looker and Tableau there as an example, to really start to gain insights out of that data. So with that, I will pass back to Alexa, and we'll take a couple of Q&As that we got during the session.
Thank you all for your questions. We do have a few, and hopefully so far this webinar has been informative. First question is from Marcin. Is it possible to set Fivetran to transfer data in real time as well?
Yeah, so we actually have as you can see, real time means different things to different people. but we actually have a 5-minute cadence that you can actually bring that data across. But for Snowflake, we can actually bring that down to 1 minute as well. So, you know, like that's why Snowflake's such a great partner for us, because we actually can satisfy those more real-time use cases.
Great. Next question is from Naveen. Can DBT create materialized views or tables instead of views?
Yeah, it can create anything you want. So exactly, that's the thing about DBT. If I'd run over our Salesforce data, then actually that creates materialized views and tables as well. So it was just because of NetSuite source, we create views in this instance, but yes, certainly.
And then next question is from Steve. The scheduling of the Fivetran data orchestration job and the DBT transformation execution look to be independent. Can the completion of the orchestration job be used to trigger the DBT transformation?
Yeah, that was a really good spot by Steve. So at the moment we're running on a relative frequency, so we're running every 5 minutes, but we actually had that functionality where you can trigger vanilla SQL load, running of vanilla SQL when new data lands, and we're incorporating that in Q4 of this year. So you can basically land the data from NetSuite and it will orchestrate the run of the DBT model. So great spot, and it's coming soon.
A few more questions. Next is from Naveen. Does Fivetran take care of source table constraints when doing a schema migration to Snowflake Warehouse?
Yeah. So what Fivetran will do is we'll look at, bring across foreign keys, primary keys, and it will kind of bring across any constraints it can, and it will try to, and it really does depend on your source database there. But what it will do is that it will bring across as many constraints as it can, as long as we can translate them into Snowflake SQL.
Perfect. And yeah, I think that is all the questions we have. If you guys have any additional, feel free to reach out to Fivetran or Snowflake, and we'd be happy to give you guys a full demo of our products.